Hey guys, it's Kim. Today I'm going to be talking about Bolivia. I didn't really start filming too much stuff until I got my GoPro in Ecuador, so I'm just kind of doing a chatty video and show you some pictures of stuff I did in Bolivia. Bolivia is one of my favorite countries in South America. I was never planning on going to Bolivia, but I was traveling with 3 other people and they all wanted to go to Bolivia, so I was like, okay, let's go to Bolivia. And so we started in San Pedro de Atacama in Chile, and we did a tour. So we hired an SUV, 4-wheel drive, to go through the salt flats starting in San Pedro. And so 6 people are able to be in an SUV. So you go to a company, and we had 4 people. So we had 2 more people to join us on our tour. And it was a 3-day tour, and it took us into Uyuni in Bolivia. And then we go through the salt flats. Anyways, I'm always hoping for hot guys on tours with my friends and I, because I'm usually with girls. I don't know what it is with traveling by yourself, but single girl travelers tend to hang out with other single girl travelers, and there are a lot of single girl travelers. If you are ever worried about traveling by yourself and you're a girl or a guy, there's always other people, single travelers, to hang out with. And if you're a single traveler, you always like cling on to all the other single travelers, because you're like, I want someone to hang out with, I can't talk to my camera the whole time. Anyways, so we get into the car, and first we have to like exit Chile, which is, I was working in Chile and I didn't know with my work visa and how I had extended my stay, or I think it's 3 or 6 months visa, travel visa, but since I was working there, it was like a little over 6 months. It must have been 6. But I had a work visa, which would have allowed me to stay extra, but I didn't know what was the situation. So I was like at the border, like, they're not gonna let me go, and I spent like, I think it was like $200 some to go on this tour. So they could care less. Then we go over to Bolivia, which is a little higher which is a little bit higher in altitude. So it's a bit colder. San Pedro is hot during the day. It's the middle of the desert. And then the Bolivia border is up in the mountains. So you go, and it's windy. And there's one thing I hate is wind. I get freezing cold with wind. Like, it can be a hot 100-degree summer day, but if it's windy, I don't know, something about wind. But it was freezing. It was freezing and windy, which is like a double no-no for me. And we go, and it's a shack. The shack in the middle of the mountains, and we have to go and enter Bolivia. So we go, and it's $135 US for Americans. My British friend didn't have to pay anything. And so we go, and we get our passport stamps, and I'm like, I always have to pee. So I'm like, I have to pee. And this is also where we transfer into, because we took like a minivan to the border, and then at the border we transferred cars to the SUV with our driver. We were a bit concerned about our driver, because we heard horror stories about some drivers just drink the whole time and drive you around. And so we're like, how do we get the best driver? And honestly, there's no really way to choose a driver, but our driver was fine. He wasn't that talkative, so we didn't get really a tour, but he didn't drink, and he's very careful driver. Like, other people were speeding past us, and he was like kept on like the main roads and kept at a safe speed. So as long as my safety is okay, then I'm okay. So the first day after the freezing cold immigration check, and there's no bathrooms at immigration, so I was like going to the bathroom behind the truck and in front of everyone. And then you go to quite a few lagunas, and they're just freezing, so you're like, looking, there's like flamingos, and I've seen enough flamingos for the rest of my life, and you're just shaking. And then you go to some hot springs, which is really nice, and you're only supposed to be in there for like 20 minutes because it's such a high altitude that a lot of people get faint afterwards. But we were just joking, we were like, oh well, they just want to keep going, so they only want us to stay there for 20 minutes. And then after the hot springs, we went to some geysers, and they are so, like, it was so windy. It was like, the sound is crazy. And if you walk through one of the smoke vents, I guess, you can, it's not too hot. You can't see anything, so you're just hoping. And then there's like little, this is Bolivia, so there's no safety standards. There's little holes with like the bubbling mud, and you're just like, okay, please don't step in it, please don't step in it, please don't die. And I always thought those like potholes of like bubbling mud were like scalding hot, like you would die if your foot gets stuck in it. But my friend was walking through the smoke, she stepped in it, and she said it was like lukewarm, so it was fine. But she did have mud on her for the rest of the trip. Her boots and then her pants, so she did have an extra pair of pants. But then that night you're in this like shack, and it is not warm at all, and I had bought a thermal sleeping bag. Didn't help me at all. Everyone was just freezing cold, and I don't think I slept at all. I may have slept a little, but with altitude sickness, everyone's like, oh, Bolivia's higher in altitude, which it is, and it hits people in different ways. Like, you don't know if you're gonna get altitude sick or not. So my friend was just freaking out that she was gonna get sick, so she decided to get like little oxygen tanks. And that day we were in the car and she wasn't feeling good and she fell asleep, and her purse was kind of falling off, and I was sitting next to her, so I grabbed her purse and I just put it on my lap, and she had woken up and she looked at me, she gave me like the stink eye, and she just grabs her purse off my lap, and I was like, okay, I'm sorry I took your purse. Like, I just didn't want it falling on the floor and having everything all over it. And then later that night she said that she had woken up and didn't know who I was or where she was at, and she saw some stranger with her purse. And I'm like, okay, I get it, that's all right. And but the only thing that happened to me was at night. This was probably for like the first 2 weeks in Bolivia. At night, I'd wake up gasping for air. Like, I didn't have enough air coming in, and then I would be afraid that I would just stop breathing at night. And of course I was like super tired of just like walking up flights of stairs, but that's everyone, and that's not really altitude. Well, it's because of altitude, but it's not altitude sickness. Okay, so day 2, lagunas, and more flamingos. If I see another flamingo, be one too many. Like, at first I was like, yeah, that's cool. Now it's like, really? A flamingo? So, and we also saw some like desert, there's a train track. But the highlight of the day was the hotel that we stayed at is entirely made of salt. The floors were made of salt, the ceiling was made of salt, the bed base was made of salt, there's chandeliers of salt, the tables were salt, the chairs were salt. I mean, obviously the shower was not salt, and there was a mattress on it, but like I was sitting there like licking everything to make sure it was salt, because the next day was the big, oh, salt flats. So, oh, and the whole time the food was just really good. I probably gained so much weight. And so we went to, the next day we woke up before sunrise. Some other groups did not, but our groups woke up before the sun rose, and so we went to the salt flats. and watched the sunrise, which was over the salt flats, which was alright. I guess I'm glad I did it, but I could have slept in too. Either way. Then you went to this island in the middle of the salt flats, and there's cactus on it, and we ate our breakfast there, which I'm the type of person where I can't function without breakfast. And some people are like that with coffee, but I'm like that with food. Like, if it's in the morning, I have an empty stomach, I'm just like, no. So I think that's probably why I didn't enjoy the sunrise, because I was just like, I'm hungry, when am I gonna get my breakfast? After the island and the salt flats, tour guide gives you like a good chunk of time just to take photos after photos after photos after photos, because there's no depth of field in the salt flats, so that's where you get all those really cool photos, and that's kind of the main reason why people want to go on these tours. And so he also brought this little dinosaur, which I think was my favorite, and then we took the car and acted like that was a prop as well. The only thing that our problem was, I think it's not that big of a deal, but our problems automatically like focus in on something, but you really need to have the whole thing in focus and not have anything blurry. So what happened on our photos is the person up close would be in focus, and people in the back, or the object in the back, would be blurry. So that's kind of a shame, but that's what happens when you put stuff on auto, is you don't really, it just kind of focuses on the closest thing, which is nice. It's a good picture, but not for the salt flat. So if you go, make sure you change your settings on your camera. And so after the salt flats, we there's a salt museum, and it's also like this really touristy place. And so I was like, okay, I'm not gonna buy any souvenirs or anything because it is so touristy, but I did compare it, and because there's some things that I really wanted, but I was like, okay, it's gonna be a lot cheaper when I get into Bolivia at the markets and stuff. But it was cheaper at the touristy area than it was in the markets. But again, I had to pee so bad, and so in South America, in Bolivia, you have to pay like a few cents, like 10 cents or 15 cents, and they give you like toilet paper to go to the bathroom. And so I quickly gave this kid like 10 cents or whatever, and he gave me toilet paper. I went running to the bathroom, and it was literally a shithole, and I had to go so bad that I was just like, okay, like literally you can see shit. And so I just did it. I just went for it and I did it, and then I came out. I'm a really fast peer, by the way. And I came out and I was just disgusted with myself. I smelled so bad. I was so disgusted. And then by then my friends were coming in and they're like, where's the bathroom? Where's the bathroom? And I'm like, you don't want to go to the bathroom. Like, if you don't have to go to the bathroom, don't go to the bathroom. And they're like, just tell us, Kim, where it is. And I'm like, okay. And I showed them, and there's always even a door on it. And they're like, oh my gosh. And then the kid comes running and was like, no, not that bathroom. And he like points them to this nice, I mean, it's not nice, but way nicer than the shithole that I went in. And I was like, I wanted to cry so bad that I had to like put myself through that horrible experience for nothing. But it's a story, whatever. And then later that day, the last stop is this like train graveyard, and it's cool for like a few pictures, but I'm a girl. I think it's more for guys, because the guys were just like little 2-year-olds again in this train graveyard, and they just loved it. It's probably their favorite thing, and you wouldn't, and I think it's a guy thing, whatever. And then you're in uni, and so this is getting kind of long, so I will just do a separate video on the rest of Bolivia.